I'm so excited you're here. Welcome to Rising Up Rare. I'm your host, Allie Ladd, mom and advocate of 2 kids with MPS1 and co-founder of the Kennedy Ladd Foundation. In each episode, we'll explore personal stories of resilience, hope, and the hard-earned lessons we've learned while navigating rare disease. My hope is that you feel less alone and remember that each of us have a unique gift to help someone else. May these conversations bring hope and inspire action. Together, let's rise up. Well, thank you so much, Charlotte, for coming on today to the Rising Up Rare podcast. I'm so excited to have you. It's always more exciting to me when I have another MPS1-Hurler mom. Of course, our mission is to raise awareness for MPS1 and always to find a cure and end the suffering for our kids. Even though the Rising Up Rare podcast is not always MPS1 families, it's always a joy and extra special when I do have an MPS1 family. So thank you so much for coming on today. I'm sure you get tired of telling your story, but we know that with awareness comes a cure. So I can't thank you enough for coming on today to share more about Titus and your journey with MPS1.
Thank you for having me.
So thank you. It'll just be easy today. You answer the best that you want to answer, however you want to answer. And if little feet come pitter-pattering in, we'll include those too, and maybe we'll get to capture some of
Hopefully
Titus
he
on
gets out of
here.
bed
So
sometime soon,
start out by
because it is 10 o'clock.
well, still right now it's the beginning of January, so ending up the Christmas holidays, and I know you all have been sick
Yes.
too. We enjoyed a fun time at Disney, and then you came home sick. I can't believe it. Were you spared?
I don't know how. I have no idea. Like, my luck is eventually going to run out because they had the stomach bug over Thanksgiving. I was the only one that wasn't sick. And then Christmas, RSV, and double pneumonia for Titus and Thomas. Yeah,
Oh
my luck
my
is going to run out.
gosh. Wow. I don't know. You're the mom. You're the leader of the
I
pack.
know.
Mom
I
can't
hope I'm
get
just
sick.
slowly building
So,
my tolerance at work.
oh yeah, and I
Yeah,
forget you do that too. The nurse and everything I see on Facebook right now,
it's bad.
everybody is
It's
sick
bad.
right now.
Like, flu is, well, and now my father-in-law has the flu. So, like, we've not even got to have Christmas, but it's fine. At least we
Oh,
were not around
well,
them.
tell us. That's good. Oh well, I don't want to say that's good, but hopefully you're
Yes.
spared the flu. Um, Well, tell us a little bit about Titus. I'm lucky to get to know Titus and his sweet sister Eliza and his mom and dad. But for everybody else, tell us a little bit about Titus and what he loves and what brings him joy. Just give us a glimpse of his
So Titus
personality.
is currently 5. He'll be 6 in March, and he is already counting down the days until his birthday so he can have his Minecraft party. He's just Titus has always just had just an infectious personality. Like, everywhere he goes, he never meets a stranger. Everybody just falls in love with him, and he's very quick to tell people that he loves them. Um, we just side note because it's just so funny. When we went to Minnesota to see some doctors, we saw Dr. Bronwyn with cardiology while we were there. And when it was the first time Titus had ever met her, and she walks outside and we're leaving, and he just yells down the hallway. He's like, "You're cute. I love you. Bye." And that's just Titus. I mean, you never know what he's gonna say. And I was just cracking up, and she thought it was the funniest thing ever. But he's just such a loving kid, but he's also very sensitive too. But he's always, I mean, still now we see nurses at Cincinnati that took care of us during transplant, and I don't remember them all, but they'll be like, "Oh my gosh, that's Titus. He's gotten so big." So he just leaves an impact on everybody, and he's into video games now. So he's his father's child, and he's learning how to play video games. So he's been obsessed with that lately. Wants to go outside every hour of every day that he's awake. Plays with his Roombas 24/7. We have 5 Roombas, and we still have dirty floors for some reason. But he's
I love
Oh my
the Roomba
gosh. Like,
thing.
he thought he was gonna have another Roomba party this year for his birthday, and I was like, "Please God, no, I can't." And Thomas was like, "Hey, what about a Minecraft party?" And he was like, "Yeah, I would love that." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." But he's just a
Well,
silly, fun, loving kid.
I agree. My family, loves your family. It's always, we want to see Titus and Eliza. And I hear it from the other families too. They're like,
Oh,
please
he's a
bring Titus
mess.
by. Everybody just falls in love with both of them. They are
He
hilarious.
said the
That is
other,
for
yeah,
sure.
was it yesterday he was talking about Lincoln? He said Lincoln was his brother. But yeah.
Could be true. Could be true. That was sweet. Well, tell us a little bit about Titus's diagnostic journey and how he was diagnosed with MPS1, and just kind of start from there, and we will go through his diagnostic journey and kind of how it's changed your life. And
So Titus was diagnosed really early. He was a NICU baby. He was born at 36 weeks due to complications with his heart, which really weren't even MPS related. He just went into a weird heart arrhythmia. His heart was beating way too fast. And we had extra monitoring for 4 weeks, I guess. And then I got induced, had him at 36 weeks. He was in the NICU mainly just for normal preemie stuff, just extra support breathing and monitoring. And he was 9 days old, and I will never forget it because it was just, we went through this whole NICU journey, which our NICU journey was super mild compared to most families. I mean, which there's lots of ups and downs with any NICU journey. And thought we were thought we were going to get discharged and it was going to be, that's it. That's the end of our journey. And we come home and just live happily ever after, I guess. And I remember it was that morning he was in for his circumcision, and the pediatrician came up just to give us discharge instructions. I really didn't think anything about it. And in the middle of her going through all these things, she was like, she said, there's this test that we do on newborns, and basically it checks for specific diseases that it's better if they're caught early and they're just easier to treat. And she said he came back positive for a disease called MPS1. And she's like, I really don't think he has it. He doesn't have any of the signs and symptoms. I do not want you guys to Google it, but here's an informational packet with a little bit of information. Don't dive too deep into it, but you guys are going to have more testing. So, 9 days postpartum and hormonal and breastfeeding and all the things. So I'm a little panicked, but I'm still pretty calm. And Thomas is absolutely panicked because he Googled it and he was just distraught. And she tells us, I mean, poor kid, he just got circumcised. And she's like, we need you to go over to UK, which was just 10 minutes down the road. But mind you, we had a 2.5 hour drive home. And she's like, I want you to go ahead and see the genetics counselor and the geneticist and get some things going. So we go to that appointment. And
oh,
lo and behold, the first thing they need is a urine sample on my freshly circumcised newborn baby. So they put the bag on him, and the poor girl, there was cotton in the bag too. And I'm like, you cannot do that. Like, he has a fresh wound and you're going to stick cotton to him. So it's just traumatic all the way around. By this point, I'm mad and I'm crying and just upset. And we do the appointment, and she did ask all these questions, which I'm adopted. So I was upset because a lot of the questions I didn't know how to answer. And I felt like at that point, I guess it was just the hormones, but I felt like I had to answer those questions and I had to answer them right to help Titus. And so I cried the entire appointment. Thomas had to answer most of the questions. And then she went ahead and told us that that Cincinnati was the closest place to go for doctors that had experience with MPS. And she said, we're going to go ahead and set you guys up with some appointments. We'll call you. And then we were discharged, like, in the complete unknown if he actually had it or not. And I remember I didn't really want to like tell our family right then. And like, looking back, I don't really know why, but I think it was just I just wanted to like sometimes I think I just as a person want to like hold these burdens all to myself, and I want to be the one that like carries all these burdens, and I don't want to burden someone else. So I didn't want to tell our family at that time. And I was like, we're getting ready to get discharged, but we have to go for just like a NICU follow-up appointment before we go home. And I didn't say any more. But then, of course, when I got home, we stopped by my parents' house to change Titus's diaper and stuff. And I just started bawling because it's very hard to hide something from mom and dad. So I just started bawling and kind of told him what was going on. But that was just the beginning. And then April 16th, he got discharged from the NICU on April 4th. And then on the 16th, we went to Cincinnati and they already had all the appointments scheduled, like genetics doctor, transplant doctor, ear, nose, and throat. I mean, they had like a bunch. And I remember in my head thinking, why do we have all these appointments scheduled already? Like, what if he doesn't have it? Like, all this is just pointless. And, but through kind of the weeks and stuff, I talked a lot to our genetics counselor, to Lisa Berry, and probably about a week before we went to Cincinnati, I knew he had it because I had done enough research on labs and everything just to know that his labs were pointing in the direction that it was not a false positive and that he had it. So it was April 16th that we went, and just getting the diagnosis was, I mean, that's also a day that obviously never forget. But we had two genetics counselors in the room with us. Or actually, I think there were two, but it wasn't Lisa, it was another genetics counselor. And I will never forget, like, they came in and they were just asking all these questions. And I finally just stopped her and I was like, does he have it or not? Like, I cannot go another minute of this appointment until you tell me if he has it or not. And she said, yes, he does have it. And I said, is it mild or severe? Because I wanted to know if it was Hurler or Hurler Shay. And she said, it's Hurler syndrome. It's the severe form. And I just broke down crying. And I remember just like, I felt like I was in a window display of a mall. Like, I felt like everybody was just staring at me. And like, that genetics counselor just stood there while I sobbed my eyes out, never said, I'm going to give you a minute, never, do you want me to get you a box of tissues? Nothing. And I was like, okay. So, me and my mindset, I'm like, okay, dried up. Like, it's apparently these people want to move on. So I remember it was just awful. And then they gave us a meal ticket afterwards. And I'm like, here, it's like, here's a terminal diagnosis, go eat some food. And I was like, I can't eat.
Oh my gosh.
And it took us to the cafeteria to get food. And I'm like, who does that? And I just felt like it was just, and I've since talked to Lisa about it. And I'm like, just how horrible of an experience that was, because I mean, like, now, knowing what I know now, I'm like, in those appointments, when they are gonna deliver, like, just life-changing news like that, like, I feel like in that moment, they need to have, like, a therapist or somebody in the room. Like, that should just be an automatic thing, because it just wasn't dealt with the way that I would have dealt with it as a nurse. I mean, obviously, I've worked in the ER for years, and I've been multiple occasions where I've had to tell families, somebody didn't make it, and that's just, you have to adapt yourself to do what that family needs in that moment. Like, maybe they do need food, maybe they need coffee, maybe they just need to sit for a minute, maybe they need a cold washcloth. Like, you just have to adapt yourself to what they need. And I feel like it was just a little traumatic. And I remember, oh my gosh, I remember every time I would see that woman in the hall, I would just cringe because I just thought, you have no bedside manner. It
Oh
was
my
horrible.
gosh. Those first generations. Well, I feel like I knew a little bit of your journey, which I do know some of your journey, but my gosh, that was like, I guess maybe hearing it from you or, it just sinking in is very overwhelming. But gosh, from the beginning for you to, realize that there could be change even in the midst of how you receive information, like those little things are huge. And we're going to talk about that here in a little bit, how people can, you know, create change or take action to fix things. And so just for you to point that out in the very beginning is that you have that empathy and you want to change it for somebody else is really a special thing for you that you are already thinking about somebody else. But yeah, I say I can't imagine, ours was kind of a different experience, but hearing you say it doesn't feel like I've lived it. I mean, it just feels so crushing and so heartbreaking. And I just want to say, I can't imagine, even though I live it. It's really hard to hear and to think that you said
Yeah.
9 days and you had already been living in the NICU and it's easy for you to say it was mild, because you've been through so much more. But again, like your empathy, you're like, I realize that somebody else has it worse off than we, and we really didn't have a bad NICU stay, but still, you were
Right.
in the NICU,
Yeah.
a new mom, and then got this information. So that tells a lot about you for sure, which we already know is why we are so gravitated to your family, and you. So so you got the diagnosis. Um, it was extremely hard. How did just your faith and your family and your relationship with Thomas kind of play into everything? Were you do you have faith? Just kind of how did it
I def I definitely
go
feel
from
like,
there?
well, I mean, we have like the best church family. We go to just a small country church, and it's, they're the best, and they knew about our journey. And my sister-in-law, she's one of my best friends, and she has three kids, and my kids think that her children hung the moon. And that she was really good. I mean, she always just jumps into action and is very quick to, like organize people to pray or whatever somebody needs. And I remember, well, when we were in limbo of everything, she knew I was having a hard time. Like, she was the one person that came to the house and she was like, "You have to get off this couch. Like, you have to force yourself to get up. Like, I know what you're going through is completely unimaginable, but like, you have to get up off this couch." And because I mean, it was bad, but like, I feel like Thomas and we were really fortunate that, like, on my worst days, he had it together. And on his worst days, I had it together. So I feel like God kind of just let us flip flop who was having a bad day. So it made it easier for us to function. But I remember, like, when I was breastfeeding and I would get up in the middle of the night and I had like a little rocking chair in Thomas's bedroom, I would go and sit in there and feed him. And I would just sit there and I would just cry while I was feeding him. But I mean, there was just so much unknown and so many emotions. Like, is he gonna live? We're never gonna be able to have more kids. Like, just all these. I was trying to process like all of these things all at once, and that was what's hard for me, because Thomas is more of a like focus on right now what's in front of us, and I'm like thinking about 20 years down the road and crying over it. And he's like, "You need to stop." But it was just, we were really fortunate in that. And then my sister-in-law organized, she asked a bunch of local pastors to come to our church and pray over Titus and pray over us while we were waiting on the news, which, like, oddly enough, the day that we had the prayer meeting, Titus had just like a general follow-up at the pediatrician just to get a weight check because he was a preemie. And we had went up there, and Lisa had called me back with some lab work while we were in for that appointment, and it was that moment that I knew he had MPS. And I just like broke down in the pediatrician's office. And then I remember thinking in my head, like, we're going to this prayer meeting, like, how do I go about this? Do I tell them that I'm pretty sure he has it, or do I just let it go? And then we got there, and I just felt like super overwhelmed just to share with everybody that, we got some new information, and I was pretty sure that he did have it. It was really special too, because like Thomas's grandpa, which he just turned 90 years old, and he's like one of everybody's favorite people. What, buddy? Okay. Hey, go get your glasses. And like, Thomas's grandpa got to come also, and he was one of the ones that prayed over us, and they anointed us all with oil. And it was just like, I feel like after that moment, like, even though that day I had gotten like the most devastating news, like the confirmation that he had MPS, I just felt like some kind of peace that I don't really know how to explain. And I think it's only like a thing that God could provide it and explain. But I look at other people, and like, I don't know how you go through this life without believing in some sort of higher power, because I mean, how can you like just know all the things that our kids go through and know the end game, and go on without knowing, like, your glasses, they're probably in the bedroom. But that's just the thing for me. I'm like, how can you not believe in a higher power? Because like, how can you just like know that there's an end someday and that there's not, you're not going to see them again? I don't know. My heart really goes out to people that don't. And I know that there's like so much bitterness because I've been there. Like, I've been there and been like, why me? Like, why would God put me through this? I've been through that more times than I'd care to admit. But I don't know. It's just, I don't understand. I just really, I guess I'm heartbroken for people that don't have that belief just because, like, I feel like that's the one thing that can keep us going is knowing that when somebody does passes, that we do get to see them again in heaven. So I feel like, and there's been a lot of times where there's nothing I could do except pray because when you get to those points where like it's completely out of your hands, you have to just hope for the best and hope that God will carry you through because there's nothing. I mean, obviously, if we could save our kids, we would today, right now, but it's not up to us. And so I don't know. I hate that there's so many people that I know that are just stuck in that bitterness and they can't get past it.
You talked a little bit about your pediatrician, that you were at your pediatrician's office when you got some more results. So I didn't plan on asking this, but just kind of hearing you talk and knowing my journey and how our pediatrician has handled things and kind of my thoughts on our pediatrician. What was your pediatrician? Were they empathetic? Did they seem to understand or want to help you? Or
So I actually worked with our pediatrician at the hospital before he became our pediatrician. And he's just a really good person and very involved and very caring. And I remember like we were sitting there and I was just like, oh shoot, like I'm really sorry, but I have to take this call at Cincinnati. And he could have stepped out of the room. He could have like come back, but he sat there with us. I think he kind of knew that it could be not so good news. So he sat there with us and he was, like, guys, I'm so sorry. Like this sucks. Like you just tell me what I need to do to like best take care of Titus from my aspect of it, because obviously I can't, you know, go through bone marrow transplant protocol. Like I can't manage all that, but whatever you need me to manage from here, um, I'll do that. And there was actually an educational liaison from what was the company's name that did the enzyme replacement? Santa Fe. I
was it
could not
Santa
remember.
Fe?
They came to
Okay.
our house and did like education for family and stuff. And then I asked Dr. Brown if he would like for somebody to come and just give him, some information and stuff. And he was super open to it. He blocked off his schedule. They came up there and educated him about MPS and gave him papers and stuff. And, I feel like that was just a testament to what kind of pediatrician he is, because most people would have said, just give me a
Yeah.
brochure.
I
Yeah.
I completely agree. Your experience has not been our experience, and so that is
Yeah.
amazing that he took the time and that he cared and, and said, "I'm not the expert, but let me know how I can
Right.
help," or tried to learn, tried to understand. That's one thing a lot of people don't do, not
Right.
just the pediatrician, but,
Yes.
anybody. They don't try to understand. And so it creates this barrier and resentment, and it makes the relationship very hard. So that's amazing. So I guess you still have him as a
Absolutely. Yeah, we
pediatrician.
actually his
What a
office is
blessing.
like 30 minutes away, but it's like it's worth it for us to drive there. I mean, even now, like, which he knows me as a nurse too, so like anytime I walk in and I'm like, I really feel like we just need this referral or we need to do this, like he's on it. Um so
A team.
it's I feel like it's also though one of those things where we're also really thankful to live in a smaller town because we have that relationship that if we lived in a bigger city we wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the journey's been hard. You've had the diagnosis. You're running all these tests and all the things. You expect it to be hard. You think it's going to be hard. It is hard. But what has been maybe something you didn't see, like Titus's resilience, and just what was some good that you didn't see coming or that you didn't expect, and just some things that helped you get through the hard days, to get through the hard things and what's to come, and just kept
I
you
just feel
going?
like, I mean, just his personality in general. I remember, like, which, I mean, there are so many situations, like, during transplant and stuff that, like, we didn't share everything that was, we shared a lot, but, like, even the really hard times I've tried to, like, sugarcoat them a little bit, I guess, just because it was just another one of those things where I wanted to be the one that carried the burden. I mean, there were even times during transplant where things got really scary and we didn't tell our family exactly everything that was going on because, and not only that, but I couldn't handle the questions. Like I couldn't handle the what's going
Yeah.
on, what's happening, what are they going to do, how is he? I couldn't handle it. But I mean, like every single day, pretty much every single day, besides when he was on the ventilator, like he always smiled. And even if it was just one time that day, like, I mean, he pretty much started like socially smiling while he was in the hospital. So it was just kind of, I mean, we had a bunch of those lovely milestones you usually have in the comfort of your own home in the hospital, which was fine. But I was just thankful he was doing the milestones. But he started socially smiling while we were in the hospital. Because I remember the very first picture I got of him like actually smiling was on Father's Day in the hospital. And I got the perfect picture of Thomas holding Titus, and Titus is like grinning from ear to ear, little almost 3 month old baby. And it's like it's still my favorite picture of
Oh.
them. Um, but you know, if he could just like I always told people, like if I can just get one smile out of him a day, then that's like enough to keep me going. Because if he can smile through this, then surely I can just keep pushing through.
Oh. So how old was he when you went? So I guess, did you start enzyme replacement therapy once you got the
Yes.
diagnosis? Because you were talking about CMFB. Um, and then, so you did that until transplant. So how old was
He
he when he had
was
transplant?
2 days after his 3 month birthday when he had his transplant. We got admitted, I think Father's Day weekend, we got admitted because they tried to, we had enzyme replacement therapy scheduled that week anyways, and they were like, you can just stay through the weekend and we'll start the transplant process next week, or if you guys want to be discharged for Father's Day weekend. And we were both just like, what's the point? Like, we don't want to go back and forth. Like, just once we're here, we're just done, just leave us here. So he was admitted Father's Day weekend of 2019, and transplant was June 26th. So we were in the hospital for 2.5 weeks ish before he had his transplant. He was a little nugget.
So you traveled every week to
Hmm.
Cincinnati for enzyme
We tried to
replacement
get it
therapy.
scheduled local,
That's cool.
and so oddly enough, there's an adult with, and I can't remember, I think she might be Hurler Shay, that lives in Bowling Green. So it's like an
I know who you're
hour,
talking about.
a little over an hour from us, and she gets enzyme replacement therapy there. So oddly, it's so weird how things work, but like we have a friend who's an adult and has Pompeii's disease. So when Titus got diagnosed, he was like, this is insane. But like the infusion clinic that I went to before I started doing home infusions, there's a girl there that has MPS. And he's like, you should contact her. So I did and found out where she went. We tried to get infusions set up there, but they weren't comfortable with a baby. I was like, good Lord. So then we tried UK because that's where we originally saw the genetics doctor, and it was just a big mess. And I was getting frustrated because I was like, we need to start this. Like, we're wasting time. And I finally just said, screw it. I said, we'll just do it at Cincinnati. I said, I really don't care. I said, I'm desperate at this point. So we drove 3.5 hours I think it was on Wednesdays or something, every Wednesday. And we just got to where we would go up the night before and just stay the night that way. Cause it was so hard because he was not a good traveler at all. He would scream the whole way there and it was just terrible. And so we tried to just stay the night. That way we could take our time getting up there, and then we would have enzyme all day. But our nurse coordinator, she has since unfortunately well, unfortunately for us, very fortunate for her, she's taken a promotion, so she doesn't do the nurse coordinator job anymore, but she was so good about just like coordinating different things while we were there so we could, just get the most that we could. She would different appointments that we needed before transplant, she would have those doctors come see us in the infusion center. Um, she was just awesome. But so they tried to make it, worth our drive, but we were just well, I mean, at that point, we would have like moved across the country if we had to just to get that started. But it was just
Yeah.
insurance was such a pain, and like nobody wanted to take care of a tiny baby. And we ended up, he was a pretty hard stick. So I think we were, let me think about this. We started enzyme replacement therapy at the end of April. I think we had 2 or 3 enzyme replacement therapies. And then I asked him, I was like, can we please put in a pick line? Because like it's just torture on him having to be stuck. He's having to have labs. Let's just do a pick line up until transplant. So I remember my mom was with me for that appointment and he had a pick line put in. So he had that for a couple months and then until they switched to a central line, but it was just so much easier just not to have him poked every week.
I didn't think about a pick line. Kennedy, we traveled up to Cincinnati, and that is one of the blessings that you talked about was having a coordinator. A lot of people don't have the blessing of that. That is one thing that Cincinnati was very good at when we were there too, was just coordinating things for us, trying to make everything happen that could possibly happen. Um, but she was stuck, and I know towards the end it got harder to stick
Yes.
her every time. And then when we had Lincoln, which he was just 3 months old or 3 weeks old, we ended up asking to have a port placed. And it's got its devil's advocate for sure. But I do feel like in the end,
Right.
I'm glad we did that because I can't. Kendi was 9 months old, but I just can't imagine those
Mm,
constant sticks on my 3-week-old baby. And like you said, they're not always an
mm-mm.
easy stick, and all the trauma he's already been through. So I didn't think about a pick
It
line.
was
So
it
that's
was simple because we
a
just,
good.
I used like Glad press and seal and wrapped his arm up real good before I would give him a bath. And we kept it, which they would do, they would change his dressing like while he was in for enzyme because it was every 7 days he had to have his dressing changed. So they would just change his dressing while we were already there and all I had to do at home was flush it every day. So it was really good for us because and then, when they took him back to the OR to do a central line, like he already had the pick, so they used the pick until they got the central line placed and then just pulled the pick out. So it
Yeah.
was good. It was definitely a good thing for him, but those infusion days are long.
So long. I think I want to say it was 6
Yeah,
hours
I'm
for
sure. It
us.
was yeah.
By the time you did the meds and pre-meds and all the things, and I feel like we drove back and forth each time because, well, I was working, Ryan was working, we just got this diagnosis, we didn't have vacation, we were trying to save our vacation because we knew a bone marrow
Right.
transplant was coming up, so we would drive up and drive back and continue
I
to
was still
work.
on maternity leave, and then
Oh,
I obviously didn't go back after maternity leave. But I mean, we're just lucky too. Like Thomas works for his parents, so he has more flexibility than most. I mean, which granted, now he's in the military too, and there's no flexibility with the military because they don't care. But at least we have part of it.
oh gosh. Well, we talked about Titus's infectious personality, and that it makes it so much easier. But there's also things, and you mentioned that, you didn't always post
Mhm.
all the hard things. And it's sometimes hard to explain all the hard things and the daily life. So that's one thing I've tried to draw attention to is like the misconception
Mhm.
of MPS1. And I think even to somebody like Titus that has this infectious, smiling personality, people he looks so good. He's doing so good. If they followed your journey, then they've seen that he's had the bone marrow transplant. He went through the hard things, and now they see him running around being a 5-year-old. So, what do you think the biggest misconception is, and how do you, how do you respond to those people, and do you respond to those people that say he looks so good, he's
Yeah,
doing
we
so
get that a
good?
lot. I mean, because I mean, gosh, he runs around like a crazy kid 98% of the time. So, I mean, they just said they're like, I think that people think because he had the bone marrow transplant, like that's it, he's cured, he'll never have any problems. So that's like on social media, I try to advocate a lot that like there's reasons we go to all these doctor's appointments because like these issues will likely come up one day. Like they're not here now, but they probably will. So that's why we go to these doctor's appointments. But like people will say like he's doing really good, isn't he? And I'll say yes, right now he is. Like right now he is, but that might not always be the case. Or like recently, like we found out unexpectedly that he's going to have both his hips operated on. And I mean, that was even a shock for us because we see him running and climbing and jumping and doing all the like there's nothing he can't do. And we were like, wait, what? But when you look at the x-ray, you see it. But when you look at Titus, you don't. But that's been something that I've had to do a lot of explaining to people because they're like, well, why? And I'm like, well, because, transplant didn't cure Titus. It just slowed everything down, and there's still damage happening inside his body. And even though you look at him and he looks fine, like if you look at his x rays or you look at lab work or ultrasounds or different things, like there's things under the skin that's going on that you can't physically see when you look at Titus. So usually when people ask me, I usually just say he's doing really good right now. And always put emphasis on right now. And that because I mean, some people will ask like what the future looks like, but those that don't, I just leave it at that.
Yeah. I think it's really hard because I know for me too, I want to be
Right.
optimistic, and I want to thank God for the miracles that can happen. But it's like I also need these other people to be aware so that they can help me advocate. It's not that I want it to be doom and
Right.
gloom or, that we are just predicting and going to say this is what's going to happen. So sometimes I'll say statistics
Right.
say, but it's like, how do you, like you said, like open up their eyes that I've had a hard time recently. A lot of people, you know, cancer is a big word, and that's kind of what people know and what they gravitate to, and that's what's
Right.
deadly for them. And I remember when Kennedy was diagnosed, like we celebrated because we were told it wasn't cancer, and what's worse than cancer? And so now I've kind of sat and thought, like it is a cancer. It is this slow, progressive thing that is just taking over everything, and it's not just one thing. It is everything. It is their heart, it is their eyes, their brain, their bones, their literally everything. I'm like, any ology you can think of,
Yeah.
we see them. Like we see every doctor under the sun. And just like you said, we have a lot of
Right.
good days, and every day's not a bad day, but the suffering
Right.
is every day. Like, you see it in your child. Um, and I hate to it's not what the suffering that these people see or maybe what they think necessarily, but you see it, like, slowly
Right.
creeping in, whether it's for us crying because, they don't wanna wear braces because their friends don't wear braces, or at the wiffle ball tournament, it's kind of a big thing where we see it. Kennedy goes all day that day, but people don't see us coming home and, she's crying in the shower because she can't stand up on her legs anymore. And it's those things that it's like, how do you don't want people to feel
Right.
them, but you want them to see, like, help us save these kids. Like, we need it as much as
Yeah.
everybody else does. And so that is a really hard thing, I think that all of us deal with because everybody says they look so good, and it's like 20 years from now, you're gonna say, "Oh, I didn't know." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"But yes, you did. I've been saying this for
Right.
20 years," you know? Um, so that one's a hard thing that I've been, like, stuck on, trying to ask everybody else because I think everybody else that I've talked to
Hmm.
experiences it too. And we all want what every parent wants. We want our parents, we want our kids to live long and happy, pain-free lives. So I know you talked about the hip surgery recently and that coming up, and that was a big
Yeah.
shocker that
pulls on my heartstrings because really kind of the same for Lincoln. We've been told that as of now,
Yeah.
he looks good, but just quickly things can change. I mean, it can change
Yeah.
in an
It
instance, and
did.
it's
I mean,
it's
we had
hard.
just had an appointment. Well, we obviously go see the hip doctor every year, but we didn't have x-rays last year because they were like, he gets exposed to enough radiation. Like the x-rays the previous year, he literally told us, like, I remember we sat down and he's like, his hips don't even look like Hurler kid hips. Like they look awesome. And he's like, at most, he might need some guided growth surgery in the future, but he's like, he looks awesome. And then, like, so I remember I was thinking, I thought back would be our issue before, which Titus's back isn't that bad. Like, he's got a little curve in his back, but it's not bad. And I thought back would be our issue first. And so, like, our annual appointments, Thomas was still deployed overseas. And so we went to our annual appointments, and like my sister keeps up with our appointments. Like, I mean, she knows the schedule just as much as I do. And so she knew that we had hip doctor that day, and that was our last appointment of the day. And so we drove up to Mason and we saw Dr. Chmine. He's like, I thought, this appointment's going to be easy in and out. And he looks at his x-rays and he's like, probably going to need hip surgery in the next year. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm pretty sure he could have just flipped me and I would have just fell down because I did not expect that. And I remember texting my sister and like while they had stepped out to do something, I was like, bad news, this appointment. And like when she called me, she was like, I looked at the schedule like 4 times and I was like, bad news at this appointment. Like, this was the hip doctor appointment. Like, hips are good. And like I texted Thomas and I was like, and I'm sure I scared him because, we were on like a 9-hour time difference. So he was about to go to bed. And I was like, don't go to bed yet. Because I thought, how can I like keep this information? I don't want to share it with other people before I tell my husband. So I texted him, was like, don't go to bed yet. And I freaked him out because he was like, oh my God, like what? So then I had to call him. And then, of course, he had that on his mind while he's, however many thousand miles away and about to go to bed and in a combat zone. So, but I didn't want to keep that from him either. But it was just one of those things where like none of us expected that. And it was just, I feel like that's why I always have so much anxiety going into these annual appointments because you don't know when a ball's going to drop. Like you may think your kid's doing perfectly fine. And then all it takes is one scan and it's like, oh crap. And I mean, I feel like I guess that's why it's so hard for other people to understand because, like, even as parents, sometimes we know these things and we know to expect them, but we still hope that that's not going to happen to our kid. So when these things happen, it's still a huge shock to us as parents. So I can understand, like, why it's so hard for strangers to get it because, I mean, the hip surgery thing shocked me to pieces, but
Yeah.
it's just, I don't know. I always, this is the terrible motto I have. I always say, expect the worst and hope for the best. That way I'm not disappointed.
That that is true. That is true. It's hard to, and it got hard for me, like, what do I
Right.
pray for? Like, like strength. People are like, "I'm praying for strength." I'm like, "I don't want any more strength." Like, maybe for me to be bold and brave, but I don't want any more strength, and it's things like that that I'm like, "Oh," like, I get worried
Yeah.
that I'm praying for the wrong thing, and that doesn't sound right, but I do, and so I really just try to start thanking him for the good things and thanking him for what he's gonna do. Because so many times I'm speechless or the anxiety, I'm like
Mhm.
questioning. Here I am questioning
Yeah.
my prayers.
I've done that before too. It's fine.
Uh, well, what would we talked about, that it is a treatment. It slows down the progression. It is not a cure. So what would a cure mean for you? What would a cure mean for Titus and your
That's
family?
something we talked about a lot. And like you said, like in prayers and stuff, when I pray, like I always say, like, please bring us a cure for MPS at a time where it will still benefit my child. Because, once damage is done, it's done. You can't undo it. So, I mean, the orthopedic stuff sucks, but it's mild compared to some other things, like when you talk about like your vital organs, like your heart, your lungs, your brain. So, like, my prayer is always that, there'll be either better treatment options or a cure to come in place while it can still benefit him. So, like, he'll have already had hip surgery. He, I mean, that damage is done. A cure wouldn't undo that. But I just hope that there's a cure at a time where it can prevent like the things that would possibly come into the future where it would prevent him from living independently or, just, cause him to, pass away early or something like that. Because those are obviously, I mean, everything sucks, but those are the things that suck more, I guess. Um, but oh no,
Pick your
I was
poison.
like, how do you word that? Um, but it's just I mean, that's always my thing is I just want that to come into place before any of like the real bad things happen.
So being in the medical field, but also in this journey, and also, I say people, everybody knows different information and different thoughts. So do you feel like you've seen progress? Like you see hope for MPS1 and you see things that are coming to light that could be a
I think that
cure?
there's a lot of I
Anti
think there's a lot of like promising things, but I think right now the biggest problem is like they're focusing on trying to replace bone marrow transplant because bone marrow transplant is just it's scary, it's ugly. There's so many kids that don't come home after transplant just because of all the awful complications. But I think that right now, a lot of the treatments, that's their focus. And my thing is like, are they gonna start trialing this stuff on transplanted kids too, like at a different dose to see if it can give them enough enzyme where it shows a difference in their lives? Or this crazy dog. Um, he's like jumping on my leg. I mean, right now it's just, I feel like that's kind of the focus is trying to replace bone marrow transplant. And I don't know. I would like to see more like how to make it better for kids that have already been through transplant. And I don't really know. I know there's some things coming
Yeah.
out that like may be helpful. Are they a cure? I don't know. But, if they can even make Titus's quality of life better until somebody can come up with a cure, like that's worth it to me. But I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this puts you on the spot or not, but to put you on the spot, if you could have listeners, if you want them to do one thing that you felt like could make impact or could make a change, what would you ask them
Well, I
to
mean,
do?
prayer is always a big thing because I feel like sometimes when you're in these situations, like the only way it can be changed is through God. Because we definitely need that miracle. Um, which I do feel like too that, I think about this all the time and I'm like, Titus has been a miracle already. Like, is he cured? No, but he's had miracles in his life because, there's I mean, there were times during transplant where I just really didn't think that we were gonna take him home. And he was able to come out of that. And I mean, there were plenty of days just as parents where I thought, I can't do this one more day. Like we just had so much going on. I was like, I just can't do it. And, that was a small miracle to me that, we were able to overcome some of the things that we overcame. But, I just think that it's just, and like you said, cancer is like such a big word for people and it's just such like a common thing. So, and like I'm not saying that they don't need help too. Like, it's just one of those like hard things where like you want everybody to have help because none of these diagnoses are fair on kids. Like it's just not fair for any kid to have to go through these things, but it's I would like to see more funding go towards MPS research and like some of these clinical trials because we battle like once these clinical trials happen then you got to fight the FDA to get these things FDA approved and it's just such it takes so much longer than it should. Like it takes years to get something approved through the FDA and I mean there's like those compassionate grants or whatever but a lot of our kids wouldn't even qualify for that right now. But just pray and like consider, making a donation to like help MPS kids. And, like St. Jude does like the monthly thing. St. Jude's wonderful. And, they've helped some MPS kids through transplant and stuff too. But like, people tend to navigate towards that because that's something familiar to them because it's something that they hear all the time and that they know. So I think like just our goal as families is to make MPS more known. So more people will think about MPS and consider, donating towards MPS or praying for our kids or something like they pray for kids with cancer. Um, like I don't want it to sound like a competition. Like I always feel so guilty when I
Oh,
talk
I
about it because I would never want to take away something from another kid, but I would like for my child to have equal help. So it's just one of those like really hard things to talk about that just makes you feel so guilty.
it is. I agree. It is very hard. And I think about, the whole if we all work together thing. Like there's so much in MPS. Like I said, we see every ology you can possibly think of that, there's other diseases that I don't know if cross functional is the word, but like, cross functional that if it helped us, it could
Right.
help another disease, but the same for the other disease, the heart things, the cornea
Right.
transplants, um, just like I hear them compare MPS3 a lot to Alzheimer's. And so it's like there's things like that with MPS1 that are affecting
Right.
other diseases. Again, where if we could just all work together, if we could just solve one thing, one issue or side effect, because our kids have so many
Right.
side effects. I mean, that's essentially what it is side effects. And if we could just help relieve the pain of or complication of one thing, that
Yeah,
could be a
I think so
win.
too. Speaking of all the ologies, I gotta give Titus his thyroid medicine. Endocrinology. I was just thinking about that. I was like, I haven't gave. Hold on, Titus, come here for a second.
So I don't want to say it is because, like I said, I hate using words like that. But do they say that's lifelong?
Yeah,
Like he will take
pretty
that kind of
much.
medicine forever?
Titus.
Does he
Yeah,
swallow
yeah,
it?
he
Is it a
swallows
pill?
it. He doesn't mind it. He just wants to.
That
He
is
just wants to be a little punk,
amazing.
and he's got.
I'm proud, Titus. You need to
Did you know?
teach
I'm talking to
Kennedy.
Allie. Did you know that? She said you need to teach Kennedy how to swallow a pill.
Yeah, we're crushing it up and putting it in apple
Oh gosh.
apple juice. Yeah.
You
Show
show
me how
Allie how
you do
you do
it.
it. Here, let me take my AirPods out.
Surely you can't swallow that. You're definitely going to have to show Kennedy. Are you drinking mommy's drink? What?
Water in my coffee cup.
Are you drinking coffee? You didn't like that coffee?
You got it? Swallow it, quick!
I am so proud.
Ew, looks like it melted. Here, you want another drink?
Ooh.
That's gross. That better?
And you got mommy's drink. Way to go, buddy. I'm so proud.
You do pretty good, don't you? Yeah, that one's about myself. Oh, Lord. Okay. Get this side in.
Let's see.
Okay. Did you get it? Yep. Okay, do this side.
How amazing.
That's where it's fault. You missed! Hey. What?
That is awesome.
No, you don't need to lay on the floor. Come here. Ah. Do it this way. Here, let me hold your eye open. Okay, now drop it. You're over too far. Go more towards your nose. There. You get it? Yeah. You've never done that before. I don't know what possessed him to want to do his own eye drops.
I love it. I'm so proud.
You're a big boy, aren't you?
Not many people can do that. Like I said, you need to give Kennedy some training. You're going to have to FaceTime her. I got to show her that video of you being a big boy and so brave. You going to do a podcast with us?
What are you
Lincoln's
going
been
to talk
doing some with
about?
Ryan.
Oh, you're going to. You're gonna show her your money?
Is that your Christmas money?
$10.
$10? What can you buy me with $10?
I don't know.
Are you gonna buy me a present?
Yeah.
You are. No, you spend it on you. I hear that you're wanting to have a Minecraft birthday party. Yeah? Lincoln loves Minecraft too.
Yeah. Are you
Yeah.
excited?
How old are you gonna be?
How old are you gonna be on your birthday? How old are you right now? 5. What comes after 5?
It's a trick question.
1, 2, 4, 5, 6.
Yeah.
That's what's gonna after 5. So that's what you're gonna be. Huh? You're gonna be
You're
6.
about to be old enough to drive.
You already drive around the yard, don't you? What? I'll buy a motorcycle. Yeah, on your motorcycle.
How about those kitties? How are those kitties?
They're cute. They're cute. They're like
Are you
cute.
are you keeping all of them?
I'm probably gonna give you one.
Oh, that's my present?
Yeah. I got 10. One of those is not yours. Whose is that one?
Sissy.
Well, I don't know. You don't know? I think Jace gave it to me. No, Pop Bob gave you that for Christmas. So one is Sissy's, because Pop Bob gave Sissy money too. Why? Because it's only fair. She wasn't listening. Neither one of you were
That's so
listening. You were
funny.
homesick.
She wasn't listening.
Yes, Sissy is a whiny butt, but that's not nice.
Poor Eliza. What about you? Are you a whiny butt?
No. No
No.
way. Yes, you are.
No
You learned a
way,
lot
Jose.
yesterday when Mommy took the Xbox. I gave him free range this morning so he could be occupied.
Did you get to play video games first thing? That's what would keep Lincoln quiet too.
Where are you taking the phone? I was showing. She does not want to watch you play Minecraft. Yeah. No. No, I'm not. Give me.
I'll
Stop it.
I'll FaceTime you tonight when I'm with Lincoln because he'll want to watch you play. And he'll want you to watch him play Fortnite.
I'll play Fortnite.
Lincoln will too. He's been playing with Luke.
Oh gosh. You want to play
Lincoln's
Fortnite
already
with
got
Lincoln and
Luke in
Luke?
trouble because
Yeah.
Luke
On
wouldn't let
this
him in
time.
his thing.
What's Lincoln doing?
He is at home with the babysitter.
Oh.
Him and Kennedy. Her name's Macy.
Oh, Macy. Oh, that's a
Yeah.
nice name, actually.
It is a nice name. She's a pretty nice person. The kids love her. Like you love who babysits you?
Who do you stay with when Mommy goes somewhere? Ashley. And Jen.
Didn't you have like a little cousin or something?
Jace.
That fun?
Yeah. Is he your favorite person?
Are they
Yeah.
funner than Mommy?
I will turn on Fortnite. You're gonna go turn on Fortnite? Thanks.
Well, I definitely want to get you back on. We'll end up today. I'll ask you 2 more questions, but
You're fine.
of course, your IVF journey and things like that. There's so much more, to your story that could help people, and I'm sure that people have burning questions of. I'd love to get to a point where people listen and then they ask questions so we know what questions people want to answer or want answered. And even those people that, I guess we have so many families that are quiet, which I am an introvert, surprisingly. And so I can be that too. but I know they still, want to ask, but they don't know how to ask or, exactly. Sometimes we don't even know how to word things, but I want them to be comfortable to ask because I want them to have, whatever knowledge they need or whatever that resource is. I'd also like to start getting MPS1 moms together just so, again, talk out loud. It doesn't even necessarily have to be organized, but somebody has a piece of knowledge, that could help the next person, whether
Right,
it's therapy or a doctor referral or, I mean, it could be so much.
right.
Um, so I definitely want to have you back on for sure.
I
So,
learn more at those
but
breakout sessions at conference than I learn at any of the other presentations.
I know I agree, and I've been thinking about that. Like, and I feel like things have changed in a way because there's kind of like this gap of there was the older kids and there really wasn't a lot of social media, but also some of the older kids unfortunately have passed away or they had different treatment that cognitively they're not as good as our kids. And
Right,
so some stuff isn't relevant where it's kind of like this other generations coming through, if you will, where you need, for me, my big thing is kind of like trauma therapy recognition,
right.
therapy for the kids, but also therapy for the parents, but also things like the school situation, the
Yeah.
IEP, and
Oh,
even if you
yes.
go to private school, how do you still get the kid what you need? Or
Right.
maybe there's things like we have a place called Sail Away here, and I haven't looked into it yet, but I'm going to. But I think it's like 3 days a week, kind of like one-on-one instruction. Um, and so that's kind of like, we've been doing public school, but she misses so much. They won't give me an assistant, so nobody's catching her up. So really, she's going through this for the social part of it, which she does need to, and she loved that. But it's like she could have so much more.
Right. And that's what stinks about like small town life too, is like we like here we have no options.
Same.
Like we have two school districts within driving distance, and like we were gonna try to do preschool, and like one of them said that we couldn't go to preschool there because we didn't live in their county limits. But then somebody else told me that you can go to preschool wherever you want in Kentucky, so whatever. But then we were gonna try preschool in Cumberland County, and it's just like it's such a fight to get what you feel comfortable, like what you need to have to feel comfortable sending your kid to school. And like everything with our kids is a fight sometimes. Like, I mean, even stuff that should just be happy moments feel like a fight.
100%.
I mean,
That's a lot of my frustration.
I've talked to other families that have like done like Make-A-Wish or like other whatever you would call the other organizations, and sometimes it's even just a fight to get your kid that, and it's like everything is a fight, and it's so annoying. But like here, they won't. I mean, Titus didn't really qualify for an aid or anything, and I I went like we did school-based daycare for a few weeks. We tried it, and I had to go with him. So every day, mom went to daycare, which is hoping that he would eventually get used to it and I would be able to leave, but it never happened. But I remember like we were just sitting there playing on the playground one day, and like all the teachers are over here just chatting, not paying attention. There's like a kid at the top of the slide beating the snot out of another kid with a stick, and I'm like, I can't do this. I said my anxiety like cannot. And then another day we went and a kid just like threw up everywhere, and I was like, I'm done. We're gone. We're going home. I said, I'm sorry. I can't do this. I said, my husband is about to be deployed. I said, I cannot afford for my children to be sick all the time. I said, we're done. We're going home. So we just do the best we can. And
Yeah.
gonna do homeschool. We've done a little bit, but we've not been super structured with it yet because Titus's attention span just cannot handle it. But hopefully we're starting medication and hopefully that will help. You need a
Who
banana.
is
We don't have a
prescribing that?
banana.
Hi,
So, can you
Eliza.
tell Allie hi? No. No. Why are you so cranky?
Hmm.
We don't have a
You don't
banana.
have your coffee yet.
We don't have a banana. We're gonna have to go to the store today. No, we don't have one nana. What? We're gonna go get some bananas. I gotta go to the grocery store today because we're out of everything.
You look
I
so
will go
pretty.
say a hot mess.
Hey, peekaboo. Are you a hot mess? I can still see you.
Hey, show her your peace fingers. That's her new thing.
I love it, girl. You gotta do the duck lips.
Yeah, make
You
your
gotta
peace
do the duck
face.
lip.
Open your eyes. She had a sensory meltdown at supper last night and stripped all her clothes off at the dinner table, and I was like, I don't care. So there we sat
Oh
in
my
this restaurant, which is, small restaurant. Honey, she was in her diaper. She just didn't want her clothes touching her for whatever reason. So she stripped them off, and I just let her because I just wanted to eat my food in peace. So she ate her food in her diaper last night with no
God,
shoes in public, and I just don't care. Go get some, and
that
I'll open
is
them. Go get some out of the
crazy.
pantry. But no, Titus is ADHD medication. So here, you're gonna fall. Don't climb on the table. Here, I got him. Um, so we went to see Julie Isengart at Minnesota,
Okay.
and she recommended medication, but she can't prescribe because of
Right.
her license. So then we went to our pediatrician, and oh, you wanted it.
Is she able though to give medication recommendations, like you know where to start, or
She's not based on her license, she can't really give recommendations, but um she kind of in a sense she kind of did because like she said that he would need to kind of be cleared from cardiology before these medications, so I knew she was meaning a stimulant. Um, but so we went to our pediatrician and kind of talked to him about it. And I've talked to several other families that like what kind of worked for their kids and what didn't. Cause seems like with NPS, like a lot of people have medication issues, like making sure they're on the right medication just because like they'll, you know, start one and it might make them like really drowsy or different things. So seems like there's a couple that everybody seems to do pretty good on. So we went to our pediatrician and we talked about it. And we actually haven't started it yet. Like he wrote us the script before Disney. And I told him, I was like, I don't want to start it until like after the holidays and stuff because like in case he has like negative side effects or anything, I don't want that to like ruin his trip or Christmas or whatever. So our friend is a pharmacist at the local pharmacy and he texted Thomas and was like, I'm having a really hard time. I cannot find the liquid of this medicine. So now I've actually been on the phone leaving a message at the pediatrician this morning to get it switched to pill form because they can't seem to get the liquid to order it. And I'm sure we could get it at like Walgreens or something, but I don't want to drive 30 minutes to pick up a stupid medication. And our insurance is really trying to push us to go to Walgreens, and I'm not doing it. And I've not like called and tried to fight that yet, but it's we're like I said, we're really lucky to just have connections in a small town because like our pharmacist friend, we can pretty much pay out of pocket for our medications, like and it be the same cost or cheaper than what it is with insurance, which is so stupid
Wow. I know. It
because
is.
insurance is just a joke. But we're gonna try because I mean, if he can take his thyroid medicine, I looked up the size of the pill and everything, and I'm like, I feel like he can take it, and if not, then like I'll just crush it and give it to him in a bite of something. But he,
How did you even get him to swallow a pill?
I don't know, like I was a little nervous about it because I mean, he told me that I could crush it, and I thought, you know what, like let me just try it, and I just, which he takes Singular at bedtime, which is just a chewable. but he's used to that one because he chews it up. So I knew when I gave him this, he'd probably chew it. So I just told him, I was like, you just put it in your mouth and you drink water really fast and swallow it. And I was like, it's gone. But he didn't even protest me.
Alice.
But I don't know, like used to, which I don't know. I think like being on cyclosporin for so long and it was so nasty. Like he had a hard time for a while, but then like he's never really protested any medicine. Like he takes his antibiotics and like he just got off of Zithromax and Zithromax tastes like dirt, but he just swallows it and then gets him a drink and makes an awful face and goes on. And I'm like, okay. Eliza, not so much. Her, I have to pretty much like pry her mouth open and put it in her mouth and then watch her gag it down. So I'm very
That
thankful that one child will
it's
take
not me.
medication. Oh,
I
Thomas
think
thinks
it
it's
comes with the territory.
hilarious when I'm giving her medicine at night. He finds it hilarious. And I mean, I can usually get a kid to take medicine. I mean, I can usually force it down without them spitting it back out. It's not a pretty process, but I've had to learn how to do it over the years. So usually I like it in the ER and stuff. If a kid's just protesting, I'm like, Mom, turn your head. You do not want to watch me do this,
Oh
but
my
they're
gosh.
going to take this medication. So then I have to do that at home. And she's like, huh, huh, and I'm like, I'm like, she's going to throw up one day and I'm going to be like, whoops.
You're gonna come viral for that. You're gonna be in some ER sitting on some kid's chest, like, forcing medicine in them.
Well, you just have to, and like oddly enough, this is so stupid, but Eliza takes liquid medication better if you can let her like lay on your lap and like where her head's like back a little bit. She does it better without gagging. And I don't know if it's because it like goes down the roof of her mouth instead of her tongue, but so now I just lay her upside down almost and just let her take it. People probably think
Oh
I'm
my god.
insane.
You gotta do what you gotta do.
I
I
know.
mean, we've done some crazy
I
stuff.
know, as Thomas says, the military slogan is something about like improvise, adapt, and overcome. That's just my whole life in a nutshell.
How's your dad feeling?
He's not good. I don't know if I told you, he's on hospice care now.
Yeah.
But he's lost so much weight. Like 1 month, they're not weighing him anymore with hospice, but 1 month he lost 25 pounds. That's like a whole body for him. Like he averaged like before he got sick and went in the nursing home, he was like his average weight, which he's like 6'4", like he's a tall dude, and he would always weigh like 230. That was like his average weight, and he's down to 147. Or that's what he was when he got admitted to hospice, 147. So like, I mean, people that see pictures, like he's not recognizable. Like if you didn't know who he was, you would not walk in the room and be like, "Oh, there's Freddie." Like there's no way. But and I went to see
Sorry.
him Sunday and he was confused. Like I always take him Arby's because that's like the one thing that he'll
Arby's.
eat. It's like that's it. So like if I could DoorDash Arby's to the nursing home every day, I think I would, just so I would know that he would maybe eat something. But he was like, I took him Arby's and we were sitting there and he's like, it's awful late to be eating breakfast, isn't it? And I'm like, 4:30 in the afternoon. You're eating supper. And he's like, oh. And then he went for a while and he said, where are you at physically? And I said, huh? He said, where are you at physically? I said, what do you mean, Dad? Like at the nursing home? And he's like, yeah. He's like, are we still in Livingston? I said, yeah, Dad. And then like sometimes like when I talk about Eliza, like I know he knows Titus and like he understands, but like sometimes if I'm talking about Eliza, it's like he just looks at me like blank. Like sometimes I think he doesn't remember her until she's there. I don't know. It's awful. And his family, I'm such, how I am. Like they don't check on him. Like but he has one brother living out of seven. He was one of seven.
Oh,
Well, he had seven brothers. One was a half brother, so there were eight of them total, which it's just my dad and one other brother that's left. So like granted, his brother's not in good health either, and like he comes and sees him every now and then, but like like his sister-in-laws, like that are still living, like where they were married to his brothers, like they don't check on him. And then I guess one of my aunts saw my cousin who works at the nursing home in the store and asked how my dad was doing. And she told her, it was like, he's on hospice care now, like he's not doing good. So then I get the phone calls and it's like, he's on hospice care. And I'm like, if you would call and check on him, I'd have probably told you. But like, well, I have so many other things to do in my life than sit and call people that never check on him to inform them on how he's doing.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
he's pitiful. He is
I
so
hate that.
pitiful. But I hate going down there. But I mean, it's my dad, so like,
Mhm.
but I just try to take the kids minimally as possible, just because like Titus admitted to me the other night that he was scared of going to the nurse
Yeah.
home. We had a big deep conversation the other night. It was like we were laying in bed. It was out of nowhere. And he says, "Why'd your mom die?" And I mean, we've had this conversation 1,000 times. And I told him, I was like, buddy, she had cancer. It was in her head. The doctors couldn't fix her. And so he wanted to look at pictures of my mom. So I pulled up pictures on my phone, and there's a lot of pictures of him when he was a baby with my mom. And we were scrolling, and he got to one picture of my mom and her best friend, which is one of Titus's little friends. It's his grandma. And he looked at me and he was like, I said, "What, buddy?" He said, "Why does Connor have a grandma and mine died?" I said, "Buddy," I said, "everybody gets old and dies." I said, "Everybody does." And I said, "Your grandma just got sick." And I said, "I know it sucks that Connor has a grandma, but I was like, you still have a lot of people that love you." And then he told me he wanted a picture to put in a glass thing of his grandma. And I was like, "A picture frame?" He said, "Yeah." So he picked out a picture and wanted me to print it's of him, my mom, and dad. And he wants to put it in a picture frame so he can have it on his nightstand. But I just thought,
That is
he's
just
5 years
sweet.
old. And I'm like, that's so big. That's such a big conversation for a 5-year-old. And then like he went to bed and I was just like there and cried. And I'm not a crier. And I was like, oh, but I was like, you're 5 years old. We're not supposed to be having these conversations.
That is so sweet.
But he's
But
got a
some
big
of them
heart.
are grown like that. Like so many of them are grown in different ways because of, I guess what they've been through and what
Yeah.
they've seen.
Yeah,
It's
but I'm just thankful that he's not to the age yet where he like realizes that he's different. Cause like right now, I think he thinks everybody goes to the doctor 500 times a year. I don't think he thinks anything of it. Cause now he has asked once or twice why do I have to do this and Sissy doesn't have to? And that's a hard thing too.
yeah,
But like I know that as she gets older, hopefully, as she gets older, she will be a support system for him and like have just more compassion towards other people just by watching what Titus has been through and it being like
yeah,
so close to her. But hopefully, we'll see.
she will.
She's
She
a
will. She'll be
spitfire
here
right now,
for
so
10
hopefully she calms down a little bit.
years. I love it though. I mean, I love both of them. Both of your kids have great personalities and
There's
you
never a dull
handle it
moment in our
so
house, that's for sure.
well. I'll ask her two more questions and then she can help you go get it.
She's just needy.
So, one of my questions is for anybody that's newly diagnosed for anybody that's newly diagnosed, they're just now hearing the words MPS1, whether it's a caregiver, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, an adoptive parent, what would you say to them?
That it does it's always there, but it does get better. I know like the grieving process for me was terrible. I did not grieve very well for a little while, and like it took a lot of people to get me out of my slump. What, you want to play back? What are you wanting? You go away. Tell me to go away. um But, like the initial shock of it is terrible, but like it puts determination in you after a while because, like we have to channel that grief into something positive, I feel like. And it takes some people longer than others to get there, but you find your motivation that keeps you going through it. And most of it, we do anything we could for our kids. And it does get better, and it teaches you to celebrate the small things in life, the small joys and victories that most people take for granted every day. And it gets better eventually. And not saying it's be life all the time, but it does get better and it gets more livable. And the community has been like a big thing, like over the past couple of years that I've really just. She is so moody. Um, the community's been a big thing over the past couple of years that I've really just started to like value, because like even my sister, like when we all got together at Dollywood last year, my sister was with us. Like my sister's such an introvert too. Like she's like, oh gosh, I have to go around people. Like, ugh. But like we got in the car and she's like, oh my gosh. She's like, I love all of these people. She's like, it's like one big family. And I'm like, I
Oh,
know. She's You're gonna flip the bar stool, child. Um, she said, it's just great how everybody just jumps in and helps with like everyone's like, oh, you need a snack? Like here, I've got snacks in my bag, or like I'll push this wheelchair, or I'll push this stroller, or here, put this kid in my stroller. Like she's like everybody just like jumps in, and she's like talks about like how awesome it was that everybody just jumps in and does these things, and like nobody asks any questions, and it's just so like natural. But I feel like it's like because all of us have been in the situation where we needed help. Like every single one of us has been in a situation where we needed help. So like I feel like in those situations, like we're not gonna ask because we know that like ourselves it's hard for us to ask. So the community is like a huge asset. Like even though this is like a very hard thing to go through, the community makes it a little bit easier. What are you wanting? Help what? We'll go get it. Are you wanting to watch Disney? It should be working now. Go grab it. Go get it and I'll turn it on. Yeah, where
yeah,
is
I feel
it?
like that's one of the things
Let me get
I
this.
wish I could encourage people to do.
Yeah, and I think it took me like a long time too to like reach out, because I remember like you were one of the first people I reached out to, but like I wanted to know, but I also wasn't ready, and I was scared. I was scared of what I would learn. And I remember like I reached out because at first I was like, okay, I need to know this. And then I was like, oh God, I'm not ready to know this. Um, and that was one of the things too, like that's one fault I have with, I don't want to name call. It's one fault I have with the society. They're very pushy. And you know, I feel like when you first get diagnosed, if you're going to hear from anybody in that first little bit, it needs to be somebody that's been through it. Because a complete stranger that's just associated with an organization that comes to you and like overwhelms you with all this information, and like it's just not as personable and it's overwhelming versus somebody that's been through it and has the empathy to understand like sometimes you can only accept so much information at a time. Because I feel like
Yeah.
that's one thing that I've noticed. Like, I mean, Titus is like a little small town celebrity, and his little Facebook page just blew up. Like I don't even know how many followers he has now. I'm curious. I'm gonna look it up on the computer while I'm sitting here because it's like ridiculous. Like I could never have imagined that he would have this many followers, because he's got like it's like it's I think it's over 10,000 now. It's insane. But like because of that, like when people like, and that's how I found you guys. Like my sister actually I think found you guys because she was like trying to do her research, and she just got on social media and typed in MPS1, and like you guys popped up. And it's like I've had people to contact me like based on they'll type in MPS1 on Facebook, because that's what people do. They like, they resort to Facebook to like updating and having different things or whatever. So like they type in MPS1 and then like Titus's Facebook page pops up and then they'll like message me. But I feel like, then me as a parent that's been through it, like I'm always like, okay, what do you want to know of our journey? Do you want to know like our transplant journey, our diagnosis journey, how he's doing now? Like what is going to be helpful to you? Because anybody can like distribute pamphlets with statistics and like this is typically what you see in MPS1, but like to talk to somebody that's living it is different. So I feel like
Oh,
that's like something that's like driven me more so lately, is just because like I want to be that resource where I can be like, listen, yes, it sucks. Yes, it's hard, but like, here's where we are now. And obviously, we made it through like some of the absolute darkest times of our life. And, when you're going through transplant and everything, like, you're going through all these things for like MPS, but normal life things are still going. Like you still have, to figure out how your bills are going to be paid while you're living in a hospital. You still have, like, my mom got diagnosed with cancer while we were inpatient in transplant. My grandma died while we were inpatient. Like, you still have all these normal life things that are happening and just right alongside parallel of like you going through this unexpected thing that is not normal life. So I think just like talking to somebody that's navigated through that is like really helpful, and that was helpful for me, is like seeing how Kennedy and Lincoln were doing. And like I always tell, I literally refer to Brooke Thomas as the mom that talked me off the ledge. That's how I introduced her to people. That's how I introduced her to my sister. I was like, this is the mom that talked me off a ledge, because she, she said Titus was the first kid that she actually met that was diagnosed through newborn screening. She literally went through and like typed out to me, like, this is Zach. This is how old he is. This is when he was diagnosed. This is when he had his transplant. These are the things he likes to do. These are, and like, getting to hear that stuff, like how Amelia loved to dance and like the things that Zach liked to do and was able to do, and the things that Luke enjoyed and was able to do, that gave me hope, because I was like, okay, these kids are like, because I didn't picture a normal life for Titus when he was diagnosed. I could have never pictured that. But like seeing someone function with a somewhat normal, like, yeah, it's not normal because we go to the doctor 800 times a year and we go through surgeries and stuff, but the fact that they're still able to enjoy normal life things, like that's what got me out of my slump, because at that point all I could see was death. Like, all I could picture, all I could think about was that I thought my kid was going to die. Like, that was the only thing on my mind, and that outweighed any other thought that I had. So, I don't know. I feel like that's like that's been a big thing for me, is just like finding that community and like being able to share my story with other people. And that way, maybe they'll see, there is a light at the end of this tunnel. Like, not that transplant wasn't like some of the hardest times of my life, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and that you find a new normal and you're still able to somewhat function normally. I feel like that's super important. And I just looked at Titus has 11,000 followers on Facebook now. Like, what in the round world? Um,
that is amazing.
I mean, not to say
Awareness
that,
is power.
not that like half of those people or even a third of those people probably engage with his Facebook page, but like that's more people that, like, more likely that if somebody types in MPS1 that they're going to find something like that, like message.
Yeah,
Like, I don't know. I just, that's the part that keeps me going now, is just being able to help other families through just sharing our story. And I mean, hopefully, I mean, I'm not saying that like, I don't know. It still obviously sucks like going through this lifestyle, but like if you can help one person somehow with what you've been through, then that makes it a little easier to bear.
I agree. That's such good advice. It was something similar to talking about basically how you were contacted um, with the diagnosis. What was that interaction like, and how to help these new families that are getting this diagnosis, because a lot of times it's just a phone call,
Right.
and then that's it. And it's like, what do you ask? Especially somebody like me that is an introvert. It's like, I don't want to call these people. But you're so right that ask, maybe what they want to know, but also, like you said, give them something to see. Give
Right.
them something to I don't want to say relate to or buy into, but something to watch. And then it can spark the questions that they need to hear. Because I
Right.
think that's what was so hard for me too, was like people call, I'm vomiting out the mouth. They're not hearing anything except, whoa, this girl's crazy. But you're so passionate about it. So you want them to know all the things,
Right.
but all the things might not be relevant, for one. For two, they might not be ready for that. And so I think you're absolutely right. Like, just by creating the Facebook page, whether it's hard or easy for some, it changes lives because
Right.
it gives people insight, it gives them resources, it gives them questions to ask, it gives them real life things to see. Um, so that's a big, it seems so small. And I know that even for me, it's like Facebook followers, like you said, you kind of laughed about it in what real world, but it's huge. And really that's
Yeah.
kind of how we started, was all of our family was divorced. And it was like, how are we going to update all these people? Again, I'm an introvert. I don't want to send 8 messages every
Oh,
day,
yes.
to all these different people. And so really it was just a way to update people. And when we
Right.
woke up the next morning, it had 1,000 followers and we were like, what in the world? And so we just started sharing. People started praying.
Right.
And then it became, there wasn't a lot, it was all doom and gloom. There wasn't anything out there. So it became hope for these other people that had this diagnosis that didn't know that there was hope. They didn't know that there was life after the diagnosis.
Right.
So that is really good advice. And
Well,
I
still to this
agree with
day, like it's just so funny, like especially because we were transplanted in 2019, and then like right around the time that immune system was recovering, we were starting to get probably get those little bits of freedom where we could go out in public. COVID hit, so then we were isolated through COVID. So by the time that like we finally started getting out in public, I mean, it was a while. But even now, like we'll go to like a restaurant or something, and some random person I don't even know is like, "Oh my gosh, that's Titus." And they're like, "I follow you on Facebook." And I'm like, "I have no idea who these people are." Or like I'll be at work and I'll go in to take care of a patient. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're Titus's mom." And I'm like, "Yeah." And I'm like, I have no idea who
yeah.
they are. But it's just like it's just stuff like that that like it reaches more people than I guess you would realize it does. But it's so I mean, it's comical to me sometimes when that happens because I'm like, here's my kid, the little celebrity, and I'm just his personal secretary, just going through life.
Well, I know. That's why I started. Sometimes I'll be like, they're like, "What's your name?" I'm like, "I'm Kennedy and Lincoln's mom." Like, my name is not Allie Ladd. It
Yep.
used to be Allie Sublett. It's not Allie Sublett. I'm Kennedy and Lincoln's mom.
Yeah, that's what I told somebody. I said I literally went from like, because I grew up like everybody knew my dad, everybody, because and so I went from like being Freddie's daughter. Oh, that's Freddie's daughter, and then like now everybody here knows Thomas, and so I went from Freddie's daughter to Thomas's wife to Titus's mom. So like I've never been Charlotte. I don't even know why my mom gave me a name. Just
So
pointless.
true. So you're on the Rising Up Prayer podcast, where obviously, as a mother of MPS1, it is my ultimate goal to raise awareness and find a cure and end the suffering for these kids. But also, everybody has a rare story and everybody can help somebody somehow. So, what does Rising Up Rare mean for you?
I mean, obviously, the rare disease world is a complicated one. It's a difficult journey, and being around other families makes the just knowing that you're not in it alone makes it easier. And like just talking about different things we've learned it through different doctors and stuff. There's so many benefits from just getting together, and raising awareness is so. I mean, it's so important for us. I feel like just because. I mean, as a parent too, it's just it gets so redundant sometimes having to explain to people that have no idea about NPS, like about your kids and what they're going through. And sometimes it's just exhausting. Whereas, like other diseases that are more well known, there's no explanation needed with those. So, not only does bringing awareness, like hopefully bring us into contact with the right people to put maybe the funding or the knowledge that we need for a cure, but it also decreases the burden on us a little bit by not having to provide so many explanations, and maybe where one day everything won't be such a fight for our kids.
Yes, I hope we see that. And that's one reason we're here. So we talked about Titus over and over and his infectious personality. And so you mentioned that you have a social media. Titus has a social media. So where can people go and follow more of Titus and get to see the shenanigans your family lives every day? Because I know it's pure entertainment for my family, even though I know sometimes it may not feel like entertainment for you. But your family is amazing, and we would love for people to be able to follow you and hopefully learn more about MPS1 along the way.
So our Facebook page is Titus, Titus, Tough, Tough. You just type that in on Facebook and it should pull us right up. I try to update every time that like we have a doctor's appointment. I try to update on that. I probably don't post on there as much as I should, and that's kind of one of my New Year's resolutions is to, be more active on that page. But I do always post every time we have a doctor's appointment. I just may not post as much about like regular life as I should. So I'm hoping that I can fix that. But yeah, there's never a dull moment in our house. It's like a full-time comedy show. So maybe I'll get to share more of that this year.
And life is busy. So definitely don't beat yourself up
Yes.
because it means you're living life and you're getting to be somewhat normal, whatever normal is. So
Yeah,
is it only
between all of this, I mean, it's like between we've got doctor's appointments and then working part-time, trying to homeschool, coaching volleyball. Eliza has dance class, Titus has swim lessons, therapies. It's just, yeah, and then military life. So it's 110% chaos,
well,
but
you
it's
forgot
okay.
the animals because I know you've
Oh
had
yeah, the
shenanigans
animals.
with Buddy, and
Yeah,
then
and
now
our
you
and our
have
8,000
kittens.
cats.
So now you have kittens. So it is definitely a joy.
Yeah.
Is it only
Yeah.
on Facebook? Y'all don't have an Instagram.
No, I mean, I have my personal Instagram, but I don't post as much on Instagram as I do Facebook. Instagram's like always the sidebar for me. So, but I'm gonna try to be more active and share just more normal everyday life on Facebook too, and not just be posting on there when it's doctor's appointment times.
Well, everybody go and follow Titus. Help us raise awareness for MPS1. I can't thank Charlotte enough for being on here with me today and helping raise awareness, but also share some of their story to help be an inspiration to somebody else. And then Charlotte has so much more to her story that is not shared today, but I can tell you that, if you have any kind of light or hope, you can see it through Charlotte. And she's been such an inspiration to so many, and just the way that she conquers life and she has that action attitude is contagious, and I just can't thank you enough. And so we thank everybody for listening, and we hope that you'll continue to help us raise awareness and find a cure for MPS1.
Thanks for joining us on Rising Up Rare. Our mission is to shine a light on the entire rare disease community because no matter the diagnosis, each of us have something valuable to share that can bring hope and create change. As a mom, it's my mission to save my children's lives and raise awareness about MPS1, and I would love your help. If you found inspiration in today's episode, please subscribe, share, or take a screenshot and post it on social media so others can join. To learn more or to get involved, visit kennedylad.org. Now let's keep rising up together.